Please note, in order to comply with YouTube policy, this free version of the audiobook has bedroom scenes redacted. If you would like to read the full text, please get the ebook or print version of the story.
Chapter 1. Sadie. My big sister Maddie was my inspiration. She was the most fun-loving, carefree and fearless person I've ever known. She was a force to be reckoned with. Even though I've had several months to process the news, I still can't believe she's gone. It simply doesn't make sense. The world doesn't make any sense without Maddie. She was way too young to die. A freak accident on one of the horses she loved so much took her away from us way too soon. I suppose it's logical in a warped way. If Maddie could have chosen how she would die, she would have picked something dramatic and related to her precious horses. She died in much the same way as she lived, full throttle and all in. Numerous times each day, I pick up my phone to call or text her. We used to share every little detail of our lives with each other. She was my person, and she was always there for me in a way that no one else ever has been. I'm not at all sure how I'm supposed to just carry on when nothing feels right without her. I know I'm not the only one aching from her absence. Her best friend Vella was thrown so off kilter by Maddie's sudden death that she quit her job, packed all of her belongings in her car and drove to California. Vella and I were never super close when Maddie was alive, but I knew the straight-laced woman well enough to realize that such rash decisions were completely out of character for her. Vella's life seems to be on track now, and I'm happy for her. She deserves that. We've even started talking to each other fairly regularly, and have forged a tentative friendship with each other. It turns out that shared grief creates a strong bond. Perhaps I should follow Vella's lead and take off on a road trip. It seems to have worked out quite well for her. I could get in my car and drive until the crushing weight on my chest eases a bit. Unfortunately, I fear I would run out of pavement before this aching grief subsides. Besides, I can't run away from my problems since Maddie had one last surprise up her sleeve. The reading of her last will and testament shocked us all, especially me and her husband Colt. Maddie left her half of the massive Colorado horse ranch, Marigold Meadow, which she and Colt owned together, to me. Yes, me. I like riding horses, but I know nothing about running a ranch or taking care of the animals. I'm a city girl to my core. I've never understood Maddie's fascination with farm life, and I doubt if I ever will. I'd much rather take the subway to an art gallery, attend a live performance, or shop in a department store the size of a city block than muck out stalls, and I can't understand anyone who wouldn't make the same choice. Except Maddie didn't choose the city. She wanted to live in the middle of nowhere with a grumpy cowboy and a bunch of stinky horses, and now she's pushing that lifestyle onto me. I don't know Colt very well, even though he and Maddie were inseparable, especially after old man Maddox left his sprawling ranch to the two of them. Their romance was fast and passionate. I always wondered if it would end up burning out as quickly as it ignited, but I guess we'll never know now. Colt has never struck me as a particularly warm guy, except with Maddie. I've always wanted a man to look at me the loving way he gazed at my sister. But with the rest of us, his demeanor could best be described as aloof. He's a tough guy cowboy, who doesn't waste any words on silly sentiments or fluffy conversation. He calls things as he sees them, and doesn't seem to care what anyone else thinks. Colt and I were both at Maddie's funeral, but we were each too numb to interact very much. We haven't spoken in the months since then. The ranch has been tied up in probate court, even though Maddie's will was perfectly clear that I should receive her half of the estate, and no one contested it. Whenever we were together before Maddie died, Colt always managed to be condescending about what he referred to as my city clothes and hoity-toity attitude. Of course, I always responded that he is an arrogant know-it-all hick, which went over about as well as high heels work in a muddy field. Maddie had tried her best to smooth things over between us, but having Colt and I in the same room simply does not work. Even Maddie had finally admitted that the two of us might never get along. That's why her decision doesn't make a lick of sense. She knew we hate each other. She had to realize this would be an absolute disaster. So why is my sister sending me to run a horse ranch with her jerk of a husband? It's almost like I can hear her contagious laughter surrounding me in the car, as I turn down the long, narrow dirt road that leads to the impressive homestead at Marigold Meadow Ranch. I shake my head and say aloud to the empty car, "You're enjoying this, aren't you, Mad? You love showing us all that you're still in charge and making us do things your way. Well, I don't know what kind of mischief you're up to here, but I'm not falling for it." The thought emerges in my mind almost like it was sent from a force outside of my brain. Famous last words.
Chapter 2. Colt. The loss of my beautiful, vivacious wife, Maddie, has left a giant aching crater in my chest that burns with each breath I take. The weight of the grief feels almost unbearable, but I know Maddie would never forgive me if I didn't find a way to carry on without her. She expects more from me than simply giving up. Maddie was the love of my life. She had a dazzling spark that shined from the inside out, and every single moment was better with her by my side. Now everything feels dark and empty without her. Even caring for the horses at our ranch, which I used to love, brings me no joy. I am a bitter, empty shell of the man I used to be, and I have no desire to change. Carrying the burden of my grief is the only thing left that reminds me that I'm still alive. The long, lonely nights are the worst. I reach out for Maddie in my sleep and wake up clutching her pillow, breathing in her waning scent. In those first few confusing moments of semi-consciousness after I wake up, I briefly forget that my wife is dead. My mind plays tricks on me as I wonder if she has gotten up to go for an early morning horse ride, or if she's sitting on our marigold yellow front porch swing, sipping a mug of hot tea and watching the sun rise. But then, invariably, the truth comes crashing back down around me. Maddie is gone, and she's never coming back. She left me here alone and beyond lonely. I glare out the kitchen window at the stirring dust from a car driving way too fast up the long lane toward my house. Suddenly, it strikes me that Maddie didn't actually leave me alone. She stuck me with her selfish younger sister, Sadie. Having Sadie underfoot will be at least 1,000 times worse than being on my own. Sadie has always grated on my nerves. We haven't spent too much time together since she lives in the city, but whenever we have seen each other, an angry tension bubbles just beneath the surface of our interactions. She considers me to be a stubborn cowpoke, and I see her as a spoiled brat. The only thing we have in common is our love of Maddie, and now our shared grief. A whirlwind of dust follows in her wake as she slides her car to a stop in the middle of the driveway. I shake my head as I stare at how she has parked, so that no one else can get through. Typical, I mutter as I head outside. I don't particularly want to see or talk to her, but if I don't take control of this situation, she'll be poking around my ranch on her own. That would be infinitely worse than giving her a brief tour and convincing her to be on her merry way. Maddie couldn't have been in her right mind when she left her half of the ranch we both love so much to her pesky sister. I can't imagine what she'd been thinking. She had to know this would be a colossal disaster. Perhaps that was her plan, to enjoy our misery from above. I take my time walking down the porch steps and approaching Sadie's dusty vehicle, hoping that by some miracle she's here to say she doesn't want anything to do with Marigold Meadow. When Sadie emerges from the car, I squint my eyes at her outlandish outfit and ask, "What the heck are you wearing?" She puts her elbow on her hip as if she's a runway model and says,
"It's called a power clash. Do you like it?"
Bewildered by the boldly different patterns and colors, I shake my head and say, "No, it looks like you grabbed random clothes in the dark."
"That's kind of the point."
She bugs her eyes out as if I'm the clueless one. Staring at the ground, I mutter, "Why would you want to look like a colorblind clown dressed you?"
"I heard that,"
she snaps. I shrug my shoulders, not really caring that she heard the insult. It seems like she'd want someone to let her know that she looks ridiculous.
"Can you grab my bags from the trunk?"
she asks as she pushes the button to pop it open. Openly glaring at how much stuff she has brought with her, I say, "I'm not the hired help. Carry it yourself."
"What a gentleman,"
she says sarcastically. Ignoring that, I say, "I assumed you wouldn't be staying long. Why did you bring so much stuff that it looks like you're moving in?"
"Because I am,"
she answers in a snippy tone. "No, you're not," I respond adamantly. She stamps her foot like a petulant child.
"Maddie left me half of this place, so I am just as in charge around here as you are. You don't get to boss me around."
We both know the will has to be some sort of mistake. Maddie would have wanted me to run the ranch. It's clear that trying to rationalize with the immature woman has completely failed when she pooches out her lips and snips,
Apparently not.
Crossing my arms over my chest, I say, "I'll be happy to buy you out." I'd been certain that this was what Sadie was hoping for. She knows nothing about running a ranch. She probably just brought all of these bags with her as a negotiating tactic. Maybe they're even empty. She likely thinks that if she scares me into believing she's moving in, she can squeeze more money out of me for her half of the ranch. The short woman glares up at me.
Did you really think it would be that easy?
Yeah, pretty much, I answer honestly.
Well, it's not. Maddie must have had a reason for wanting me to be here, and I intend to find out what it is,
she says, stubbornly lifting her pert chin. What about your job training mutts in the city? I ask, hoping to remind her that her life is elsewhere.
I took a leave of absence,
she informs me, smiling as if it is great news. The air whooshes out of my lungs. This is so much worse than I imagined. Sadie evidently plans to insert herself into my ranch's daily operations. Unable to stand around and bicker with the impossible woman any longer, I stalk toward the barn without another word. Sadie calls out after me in an overly friendly fake tone.
I'll just make myself at home then. Thanks so much for the warm welcome.
I hear her mutter under her breath.
Jerk.
But I don't rise to the bait. Instead, I put as much distance as possible between myself and the Spitfire, who apparently plans to make my already depressing life spiral downward into a living nightmare.
Chapter 3. Who does he think he is? I mutter as I drag my third heavy suitcase up the stairs to the spare bedroom I've selected. I didn't pick the biggest room. Instead, I went for the one with the west-facing windows that look out over the main pasture. Watching the colors bloom as the sun sets over the horizon is way more appealing to me than having the brightness wake me early as it rises in the east. I know I brought too much stuff with me, but I'm not sure how long I'll be here. I've always believed it's better to have too many clothing and shoe options, rather than not enough. Fashion may not be a priority in this backwoods town, but that doesn't mean I have to let my standards slide. The closet in my room is small, so I only unpack one suitcase. I'll rotate which clothes are hung up as time goes by. My features draw downward as I ponder spending a significant length of time here. I know from previous trips to visit my sister that the nightlife in town is absolutely dreadful. I enjoy riding horses, but not the work involved in taking care of them. And Colt obviously doesn't want me here. I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to do with myself now that I'm here, but Maddie must have left me her share of this place for a reason. I'll stay until I figure out what her master plan is. After puttering around my room for as long as I can, I reluctantly head back downstairs. I can't avoid Colt forever, so it's probably best just to face him head-on and see what I can do to help out around here. I'm looking at framed pictures of Maddie and Colt on the fireplace mantel when the man barges into the house. The happy look on his features in the photographs is nowhere to be found. Instead, his face is etched with sadness. I'd feel bad for him if he wasn't such a jerk. A large black lab lopes in after the man. The dog lifts its nose to the air, then approaches me, slowly flapping its tail. I kneel down to greet him. Hi, Boo. You're such a sweet boy. The dog leans his head on my shoulder. His warmth is beyond comforting as I tilt my head onto his. Eventually, he walks away and flops down on the floor with a great huff. Colt is downing a glass of cold water at the sink. I decide to try my best to be friendly, since we've obviously gotten off to a rough start with each other. After walking over to stand near the sturdy kitchen table, I say, Boo would make an excellent therapy dog. Without looking away from the window over the kitchen sink, Colt responds in a gruff tone.
Boo is an amazing ranch dog. Don't go trying to change him.
Insulted that Colt obviously thinks so little of what I do, I say, but he could provide comfort to so many people and still be a great ranch dog.
No.
The man answers firmly. I briefly consider pointing out that Boo was my sister's dog too, but decide instead to try to make peace with the stubborn man. Taking on a bright tone, I ask, so what can I do to help out around here?
It's lunchtime and I'm hungry.
He answers, still staring out the window. I can already see where this is going, and I want no part of it. I'm not here to cook and clean. You can hire a housekeeper for that. I want to take an active role in running the ranch. Colt lets out a frustrated huff, before going to the refrigerator to pull out lunch meat, cheese, and condiments. Since he's ignoring me, I ask more explicitly, "What can I do to help with running the ranch?"
The stalls always need mucked out.
He answers as he makes himself a thick sandwich. My mouth waters as I look at his lunch. He only has out one plate, so I go over to the cabinet to retrieve another for myself. Deciding that letting him choose my job isn't working, I suggest, "How about if I take a look at the books? Maddie did all of the bookkeeping, right?" Colt nods, but doesn't glance my way as he takes a big bite from his impressive sandwich. I help myself to 2 slices of bread and the other sandwich fixings he has left on the counter as he stands at the sink and wolfs down his lunch. As soon as I have my sandwich prepped and the ingredients put away, I take my plate to sit down at the table. Trying to be friendly, I offer, "Why don't you take a short break by sitting down to eat?"
Already finished.
He answers as he stalks toward the front door. Boo immediately rises to follow the insufferable man outside. Sitting alone at the large kitchen table, I realize that if I stay here long, I'm going to have to get used to eating alone.
Chapter 4. I don't want that blasted woman here. The thought of her poking around Maddie's stuff and taking over the jobs my wife used to do makes my fists clench. Granted, someone needs to handle the taxes and other paperwork, but I would much rather hire a stranger to take care of it than have Maddie's annoying sister underfoot. Besides, Maddie did so much more around here than just keeping the books. It isn't going to be long until the place starts falling down around me, but there isn't a single person in the world who can fill Maddie's shoes, especially not her spoiled sister. I wish Sadie would just go away, but she has every right to be here. For some strange reason, my wife thought it would be a good idea to stick me with her. Of course, Maddie probably never imagined that she would die at such a young age, but she clearly spelled out in her will that Sadie was to receive her half of the ranch. It really doesn't make any sense. Maddie and I started working at Marigold Meadow for grumpy old man Maddox when we were young adults. He was as gruff as a grizzly bear, but he had a secret soft spot for the 2 of us. We stuck by his side through thick and thin, even during the sparse months when the ranch struggled financially, making him unable to pay us for several weeks in a row. When it came down to paying us or feeding the horses, Maddie and I never even considered taking paychecks. We cared far too much about the horses to put them in harm's way or leave our jobs. They mattered way more to us than a measly paycheck. Old man Maddox saw how much we loved the animals, and he noticed the strong spark of attraction between me and Maddie. He didn't have any family, so when he bequeathed the ranch to us, it wasn't a huge surprise to anyone, and no one contested the will. I'm sure he knew we would marry and probably assumed, like I did, that we would grow old together on this sprawling ranch with loads of kids, and eventually grandkids, running around and filling the place with life, love, and laughter. I bet the old coot is turning over in his grave at the thought of Maddie's entitled, bratty kid sister owning half of the place he worked so hard to build. She has done nothing to earn it, and she doesn't deserve it. I truly can't imagine what Maddie was thinking by leaving her half of this place to Sadie. Sadie has a good heart, but she doesn't belong on a horse ranch. She thrives in the city. Maddie was so proud of the successful career Sadie has built as a therapy dog trainer. I can't imagine why the younger woman would be willing to risk that career to come out here and disrupt my life. I'd much rather be left alone, so I can turn into an updated version of grumpy old man Maddox. Boo sticks his snout into my hand, seeking a head rub. I'm unable to resist the loving animal. He has been such a comfort since Maddie's passing. It's almost as if he senses my loneliness. Sadie is probably right. Boo would make an excellent therapy dog, but I don't want to share him. Nor do I want to admit that Sadie is right about anything. The impossible woman would probably never let me forget it. Something about Sadie sets my teeth on edge. We clash at every turn, and I simply don't want to be around her. Actually, I don't want to be around anyone. If I could live the rest of my days with just the horses and Boo, I would be a happy man. Unfortunately, some human interaction is inevitable. If nothing else, I have to deal with the boarders who rent stalls here for their horses. A couple of them come at set times each day to care for their animals, but most only show up occasionally when the mood strikes. The rest of the time, they count on me to care for their horses. I happily do it, for the horses, not for the people. I can't imagine having one of these beautiful animals, and only taking care of it when it's convenient. But the fact that I'm willing and able to jump in and cover their chores is one of the selling points for owners to board their horses here. It doesn't matter if it's a holiday, if the weather is nasty, or even if I'm sick. I'm out here all day, every day, no matter what. When Maddie was by my side, it brought me joy to spend my days in the barns and pastures, but now it feels like an unending list of empty chores. Everything has lost its meaning. Without Maddie, nothing matters. I'm grooming Patches with a curry comb to keep her coat gleaming, when something makes me stop in the middle of a circular motion. I'm used to the horse sighing while I rub her, but now she lifts her nose and snorts. As soon as I turn my attention toward what the horse is looking at, I see her. The sight nearly makes my legs falter. I hold onto the sturdy animal and stare out at the vision in the pasture. It's Maddie, with her long shiny hair flying out behind her as she rides Buckles at a quick canter. My first instinct is to run out to her and pull her into my arms, until I remember that it can't possibly be Maddie. She's gone. I often forget that Sadie is perfectly comfortable on a horse, since she doesn't seem to me like the type to enjoy it. I'm sure she only took up horse riding to be like her cool older sister, but she has a natural knack for it, just like Maddie did. The younger woman looks so much like Maddie from behind. She has the same rounded curve to her hips as Maddie did, and the sight makes my breath hitch in my chest. I'd give anything for even a little more time with my wife. Seeing Sadie atop a horse, looking so much like her sister, is absolute torture. I cut Patch's grooming session short. She nickers to regain my attention, but I lead her back to her stall. I can't focus on her right now. In fact, I can't seem to focus on anything at the moment. My grief is too overwhelming, and having Sadie here is only making it worse. I need to figure out a way to get her to go back to her regularly scheduled life, so I can go back to moping alone, the way my life is now meant to be.
Chapter 5. After looking at the ranch's bookkeeping system until my eyes are crossed, I need to get outside. It's been a long time since I've ridden a horse, but my muscle memory quickly returns. I had forgotten how good it feels to be free and flying across an open pasture on a horse's back. Buckles is quick and obedient. He feels sturdy and dependable beneath me. I'd been dreading climbing back onto a horse, considering how Maddie died, but I decided it is better to face that fear than to never ride again. The investigators determined that what happened to Maddie was a freak accident, and it wasn't anyone's fault, not even the horse she was riding. Even though that horse didn't technically do anything wrong, I'm still glad Colt got rid of it. I don't want to see that particular animal, and I'm sure he doesn't either. It's tempting to blame all horses or deem riding to be too dangerous, but if Maddie had only been injured in the fall, she would have been back out here riding as soon as her body was able. She would not approve of me hiding out and giving up on the one thing we both loved so much. Our shared love of riding was one of the few things my sister and I had in common, and being back on a horse makes me feel closer to her. Granted, it was more her thing than mine, but when we were younger, we spent countless hours together on horseback. I can almost feel his glare burning a hole in my back. Unable to stop myself, I turn my head around. Sure enough, Colt is shooting venom-tipped eye daggers in my direction. I truly have no idea what I've done to make that man hate me so much, but I refuse to let his unwelcoming attitude chase me off. Maddie had a reason for wanting me to come here. I just need to figure out what it is. Ignoring Colt's obvious glaring, I face forward and squeeze my legs tighter around Buckles. The reliable horse immediately picks up the cue. He lengthens his stride and goes faster. The wind whips over me as the horse carries me across the vast expanse of green grass. We finally stop when we reach the patch of golden marigolds that the ranch was named after. They were Maddie's favorite flower and color. The first time she brought me out here, Maddie said the waving flowers look like a sea of sunshine. She was right. They are bright and cheery. It almost seems wrong for them to be so happy when Maddie is gone. Her death has sucked all of the joy out of even the simplest things. I hop off the horse and tell him firmly to stay nearby. He may wander off, but the large pasture is fenced in, so he won't go too far. I'm unable to resist the allure of the beautiful marigolds. Stooping down, I run my hands through the lovely flowers. The movement stirs up their pungent smell. I cringe and lift the back of my hand to my nose. The chuckle startles me, until I hear Colt's deep voice rumbling from behind me.
They look way better than they smell.
No kidding, I say, crinkling my nose. Shaking my head, I add, when I see how pretty they are, I always forget about the odor until it's too late. Colt nods.
Maddie sure did love them. She always said they were like her after a long day's work, cute but stinky.
That sounds like something she would say. I grin up at him. He shrugs his wide shoulders.
She wasn't wrong.
It is the first semi-friendly interaction we've had. I don't want to do anything to mess it up, but my curiosity gets the best of me. What are you doing way out here?
When I saw which direction you headed, I decided I'd better ride out to warn you not to let Buckles loose, since we have some fence line that needs repairs. But of course, you already set him free.
The disdainful tone he usually adopts with me has returned. Oh, I didn't know, I say, turning to see how far the horse has wandered away.
No, but you jumped in headfirst anyway, like you always do.
He mutters as he angles his horse toward the area where Buckles is nibbling on some grass. Buckles sees him coming and takes off. Even though the horse is being playful, it's obvious by Colt's posture and cussing that the man is quite serious. Of course, Buckles manages to find the gap in the fence line and rushes through it. Colt turns the horse he's riding back in my direction. I shuffle from foot to foot after he stops nearby and glares down at me. Eventually, he says,
Climb on so you can ride Buckles back to the stable, if we're able to catch him.
We'll catch him, I say with more confidence in my tone than I feel. After Colt slides his boot out of the stirrup, I put mine in. He grudgingly offers me a hand, which makes it easy for me to climb up and straddle the horse behind him. The saddle isn't made for two people, so I'm practically on top of the man as I wrap my arms around his waist to stay on. Surprisingly, the horse doesn't balk at the extra weight. Despite her willingness to oblige us, I don't want to make the animal carry both of us for very long. I make a mental note to be sure to give her an extra long rub down tonight, to ease any sore muscles from the extra work. Heat emanates from Colt's back. The sun is shining in the clear blue sky, but the wind is brisk, so I find myself leaning into his warmth. Smiling at how good he feels, it suddenly dawns on me how lonely I am. It's evidently been far too long since I've been with a man, for me to find leaning up against my sister's bristly widower to be in any way appealing. This dry spell in my love life needs to end, before I do something ridiculous that I'm sure to regret. It isn't hard for us to find Buckles, but the wily horse makes a game of staying just out of our reach. The annoyance rolls off of Colt in vibrating waves as we play cat and mouse with the horse. Eventually, Buckles tires of the game and allows us to ride up alongside him. Colt grabs his reins. My plan is to jump down from the horse I'm sharing with Colt and walk around to Buckles, but instead, I make the quick decision to swing my leg around to sit side saddle so I can jump onto Buckles. The transition is smooth and I'm quite pleased with myself until I see Colt's face. His complexion is sheet white when he asks,
What the heck do you think you're doing? Are you trying to get yourself killed?
No, I just thought it would be fun. My voice trails off as I gape at him and realize he was truly terrified for my safety.
You can't mess around like that, Sadie. It's not safe,
he says sternly, before turning his horse and heading back toward the barn. Sorry, I mutter, but he is already too far away to hear me. My first instinct is to be annoyed with him for being so crotchety, but it dawns on me as I watch his broad shoulders right away that he was actually concerned about me. He is the one who found Maddie after the accident, so it makes sense that he would be overly cautious around horses after that. Vowing to be more careful, I ride Buckles back to the barn.
Chapter 6. The days turn into weeks, and they all begin to blur together in a cycle of unending chores and grief. Sadie and I settle into a comfortable routine of being civil, but distant, with each other. Loneliness makes a strange bedfellow. I sleep fitfully at best, and when I do manage to catch some shut-eye, the nightmares creep in. Tonight, I wake up with a start. My sheets are soaked in sweat, and I'm shaking from head to toe. It was my usual nightmare, the one I actually lived through, where I find Maddie lying dead in a field. But this time when I turned her over, it was Sadie's lifeless eyes staring back at me. The bad dream has me so shaken that I'm tempted to sneak into Sadie's bedroom to check on her. I tell myself over and over that it was just a dream, but I need to see it with my own eyes to believe it. The nightmare seemed far more real than any comforting mantra I repeat to myself. Knowing Sadie would freak out if she woke up and caught me skulking around her room, I walk past her closed bedroom door and head down to the kitchen. I put the cast iron kettle on the gas burner to heat some water for calming chamomile tea. The relaxing brew likely won't be able to touch these jitters, but I need something to do with my shaky hands. Simply going through the ritual of preparing the tea with locally sourced honey is reassuring. Just before the teapot whistles, I remove it from the burner, hoping to avoid disturbing Sadie. The woman in question walks up behind me as I'm filling my mug.
Do you have any whiskey to turn that tea into a hot toddy?
We do, I answer, already heading for the liquor cabinet. Sadie helps herself to a tea bag and mug. She's pouring in some hot water when I return to the counter. She accepts the liquor bottle and adds a generous splash of whiskey to her mug. Deciding she had a good idea, I pour from the bottle into my own hot beverage as I say, "Sorry if I woke you. I was trying to be quiet."
I was already up.
She murmurs. After a long silence, she adds,
You have nightmares too, huh?
"You heard that?" I ask, staring down at my mug as humiliation sweeps over me. From my peripheral vision, I see her nod solemnly before she says,
I guess it's to be expected after what you've been through.
I remain silent, unwilling to admit that this particular nightmare involved her. Sadie fills the silence by continuing.
Sometimes I get so caught up in my own grief, I forget that you're going through the same thing, or worse.
Me too, I admit quietly. After blowing on my drink and taking a sip, I decide to be vulnerable with the woman. Looking her in the eyes, I say, "I'm sorry for being such a jerk to you. I just miss her so much, and you remind me of her in a lot of ways."
It's not like I've been super sweet to you either,
Sadie says with a lopsided grin. After she suggests that we sit out on the front porch swing to enjoy our hot toddies, I grab a quilt from the sofa and follow her out there. Boo gives a great huff as he plops down on the porch, then almost immediately begins snoring. We share a smile over the lazy dog, before situating the blanket around our shoulders and settling on the golden yellow swing, which Maddie had asked me to paint the color of a marigold for our last anniversary. I didn't realize at the time that it would actually be our last anniversary together. Sadie has her hands wrapped around her mug for extra warmth as she says,
The sky is so clear out here, it feels like I can see a million stars twinkling above us.
"That's one of the many things I love about this ranch," I tell her. Her voice takes on a wistful tone when she asks me,
Do you think Maddie is up there somewhere looking down on us?
I'm not sure how to answer her, since I've never been a big believer in the afterworld. Finally, I say, "I sure hope so."
Me too.
She murmurs before taking another sip of her drink. We use our legs to sway us slowly back and forth, as we drink our steaming beverages in comfortable silence for several long minutes. Eventually, Sadie says,
This whiskey makes me feel all warm and tingly in my belly. We should both sleep well after we finish these.
"Indeed," I agree, nodding. After downing the rest of my tea, I set the mug on the side table. Intending to get up and head to bed, I turn to tell Sadie goodnight. The moonlight catches her shiny hair and makes it glimmer in a way that I've only ever seen on one other person. Before I can filter the thought, I say, "Sometimes you look so much like her that it takes my breath away." Sadie sets down her own empty mug and turns to me then. The shape and color of her eyes are so similar to my wife's, it makes my chest ache. I reach a hand up to cup her cheek with my palm. Her eyes drift closed. I find myself leaning in, without my brain giving my body permission to do so. Our lips find each other. Hers are soft and pliable under mine. They help ease some of the aching longing that has been building inside me for so long. We kiss in the bright moonlight and share our lonely hearts with each other. "Maddie," I breathe out the name that fills my heart and soul. Sadie jerks back. The hurt expression in her gaze guts me. I'm so sorry, Sadie," I say, but the woman covers her mouth with her hand and runs inside the house without another word.
Chapter 7. I don't know what I was thinking when I allowed Colt to kiss me. It was a crazy, stupid mistake, even though it felt really, really good. I guess that just goes to show how insane a person can be, driven by extreme loneliness. How we interact with each other this morning is critical to our relationship going forward. It is imperative that we not allow things to be awkward, so I decide to address the ill-advised kiss directly. As soon as I walk downstairs, I look Colt in the eyes as he sits at the breakfast table and say, "Welp, no more whiskey for me." It makes strange, ridiculous things happen. He looks relieved to speak so openly about the elephant in the room when he replies,
"No kidding. I think it would be wise for us both to completely forego hot toddies going forward."
I nod, glad he agrees, even though there's a small disappointed ache in my heart. That kiss had been the best of my life, but I refuse to think about that. Colt is Maddie's, and he always will be. He proved that when he called me by my sister's name. I was crazy to even imagine that he might have warm feelings for me. It's wrong and gross for me to look at my sister's widower in a romantic capacity. He's just a heartbroken, lonely man seeking solace with the one woman who vaguely looks like his late wife. If I don't do something to change things, I'm going to end up a pathetic spinster who daydreams about the one time her sister's widower kissed her senseless. When Colt stands to take his breakfast dishes to the sink, I say, "Being stuck out here in the middle of nowhere is starting to get to me, so I'm going out tonight." Colt turns and gives me a long look before saying,
"Good idea."
I don't know how I'd been expecting him to respond, but that wasn't it. He stalks out the door. Now I'm left wondering if he thinks it's a good idea for me to get out and have some fun, or if he was implying that he wants to go out too. Either way, it's clear that he thinks last night was a huge mistake. He obviously wants to move on and forget about it as much as I do, or at least as much as I wish I wanted to. Pining after my dead sister's husband is not on my agenda, so I need to go out, meet an interesting guy, and get this ridiculous crush I seem to be developing on Colt out of my system. Way out of my system. For good. With the decision made to get back to some semblance of a social life at a local pub tonight, the rest of the day goes by in a blur. My mind keeps wandering back to what I should wear, how I should do my hair and makeup, and if Colt will be there. As much as I try to squash that last thought right back down by wondering who else I might meet tonight, images of Colt in his perfectly fitting jeans that are tight in all the right places keep popping into my mind. It doesn't help that he has removed his shirt to shovel hay, and his back muscles ripple with each movement. I watch, mesmerized, as a single bead of sweat trails down his spine. Needing to distract myself from his firm body, I claim to have paperwork to do inside. It's the only way I can force myself to tear my eyes away from him. I never allowed myself to think of Colt in a romantic way when Maddie was alive, and I don't want to think of him in that capacity now. The only kind words or actions he ever has for me are when he's tipsy enough to view me as Maddie. The last thing I need is to fall for a man who only likes the parts of me that remind him of my dead sister. That would practically be asking for crushing heartbreak. I usually wear jeans and a t-shirt with a flannel I can either wear or tie around my waist, depending on the weather, to do the dusty, unglamorous chores around here. Those boring outfits don't give me much opportunity to show off my flair for fashion. So, tonight I plan to go with some bold, eye-catching color options that will draw some attention my way. Hopefully good attention, of the handsome available male variety. My body is practically thrumming with the excitement of finally going out for some fun, so I give up on work early and take the extra time to primp. After a long, luxurious bubble bath, I shower to wash my hair, massage in some deep conditioner, and rinse off. I even slather on some of the expensive, delectable-smelling body butter that Maddie gave me last year for my birthday. I take the extra time to curl my hair and carefully apply a coat of shiny, hot pink lipstick to boost my confidence. Once I finally declare myself to be ready, I feel great as I walk downstairs. Colt takes one look at me and says,
"Wow, that outfit sure is, colorful."
Swiping my hand down the short green skirt, I begin to wonder if the bright purple cowboy boots are too much. The yellow striped shirt and orange jacket are bold choices, but I'm confident that they work well together. Glaring at Colt over the snarky comment, I say, "You're just jealous because your entire wardrobe consists of Levi's jeans, blue plaid shirts, and brown cowboy boots."
"That's not true,"
Colt claims. When I give him a disbelieving look, he says,
"I also have a couple of red plaid shirts that I break out for special occasions."
The chuckle bursts out of me, before I have a chance to think it over. Shaking my head, I say, "You're ridiculous." Glancing down at my vivid clothes, he says,
"Right. I'm the ridiculous one."
When I ignore his sarcasm, he adds,
"You're sure to get plenty of attention in that outfit."
"That's the plan," I tell him before sashaying out the door.
Chapter 8. I'm not sure why I feel compelled to go out to the bar tonight and keep an eye on Sadie. She's a grown woman who can take care of herself, but I feel like she's my responsibility while she's living under my roof. And that darn outfit. The randy country boys who patronize the only bar within a reasonable distance won't be able to keep their eyes off her tantalizingly short skirt. Their hands are sure to follow their gazes, and that realization makes me feel queasy. I'm sure that I'm just worried about her because she's Maddie's little sister. Maddie would have my hide if I didn't watch out for Sadie. But something that feels a whole lot like jealousy rears its ugly head when I think about another man putting his hands on Sadie. I don't have any right to claim her as mine, but that doesn't keep me from wanting to strangle anyone who dares to touch her tonight or any night. Suddenly, the desire to go out is nearly overwhelming. I tell myself that I just want to get out of the house for a cold beer, but I have plenty of those in the fridge. Deep down, I know that my main goal is to chaperone Sadie. Smiling to myself after my shower, I take extra time shaving and put on one of my red plaid shirts. Sadie is sure to get a kick out of me being all gussied up. The woman already left for the bar, so I'm able to get my pickup truck out of the driveway, which she normally blocks by parking in the worst possible spot. It's an annoying habit that perfectly sums up her selfish, frustrating attitude. When I walk into the dark, smoky bar, the night's activities are already in full swing. Small groups are playing raucous games of pool and darts. The regulars hover around the bar with beer bottles in hand. The honky-tonk band is cranking out music, and several couples are dancing on the parquet section of the floor. My eyes are naturally drawn to Sadie. She's the prettiest female in the entire establishment, by far. It doesn't take me long to realize that I'm not the only one who has noticed her. Several males, including some with women by their sides, are sneaking glances in Sadie's direction as she takes a long pull from a brown bottle of beer. When she tips back her head and laughs with abandon at something Timmy Green has said, the sound is both enthralling and infuriating at once. I know for a fact that Timmy is not that funny. She's just flirting with him to get attention, and it's working. Every man in here is drawn to her, including me. Darn it. Lila, the bar's scrawny waitress, sidles up to me. Her hair is thin and looks crispy from being bleached a few too many times. Her voice is raspy with her pack-a-day habit. I do my best not to cringe away when she grabs my upper arm and says,
"Hey baby, it's been too long since I've seen you in here."
"I don't get out very often," I tell her with a half smile.
"Well, I for one would like to see more of you. Much more."
Her eyes travel down to my redacted. Her unsubtle invitation makes me uncomfortable. I can't even imagine being with the skinny woman. Her bony physique doesn't appeal to me in any way. I much prefer curvy hips and lush redacted like Maddie's and Sadie's. My gaze is drawn to the dance floor, where Sadie is now slow dancing with Timmy. The man is well known for having slept with half the females in this county. He's not particularly interesting or attractive, but he pursues women relentlessly to redacted. As soon as they do, he drops them like a hot potato. He's the worst kind of player. Sadie can't possibly be interested in him. Is she?
"I'm due for a break if you want to head out back,"
Lila offers. Forcing myself to pull my gaze away from Sadie, I try my best not to recoil from the woman's brazen offer. I don't want to redact it in an alley with Lila or anyone here, with one possible exception. That realization makes an icy chill shiver through my veins. I shouldn't be attracted to my late wife's sister. It isn't right.
"How about it, baby?"
Lila prompts me. Unable to think of a kind way to turn down her unwanted advance, I redirect by saying, "I'd like a beer, please. Whatever you have on tap." Lila's prematurely wrinkled face scrunches with annoyance as she says in a sarcastic tone,
"Yes, sir."
The waitress whirls away and heads for the bar before I have a chance to try to make amends with her. I'm not sure what to say to her anyway, since I don't want to lead her on or give her any hope that something might ever happen between us. Sadie is leaning her head on Timmy's thin shoulder as they sway together on the dance floor. I want to rush out there and save her from the womanizer, but it's really none of my business what she does or who she does it with. Beer sloshes over the side of the frosty mug when Lila slams it down in front of me. Ignoring her obvious snit, I say, "Thank you," but she has already turned and rushed away. I do my best to keep my gaze away from the dance floor, but am unsuccessful with that mission. By the time my beer mug is half empty, I'm openly staring at Sadie and Timmy. He keeps pulling her closer and closer to him. I glare with half-lidded eyes as he whispers something near her ear that makes her smile. When his hand slides down the curve of her waist and grips her hip, that does it. I can't silently sit by and take any more of this. After chugging down the rest of my beer, I stride purposefully out to the dance floor. "I'm cutting in," I say firmly to Timmy, standing tall to remind him that my height bests his by at least 2 inches.
"Buzz off, Colt."
The man grouches at me. After he spins Sadie around away from me, I step forward into their personal space and growl, "I said I'm cutting in." Not waiting for the man to release her, I shove Timmy out of the way and pull Sadie into my arms. The woman looks startled by my bold move, but there is a definite glint of excitement in her eyes.
"What the heck, man?"
Timmy sputters, but he walks away without challenging my dominance. I pull Sadie closer to me, gripping her hip, that Timmy had the audacity to touch and claiming it as mine. Her body naturally relaxes into my embrace, even as she says,
"Are you redacted me by metaphorically peeing in a circle around me with your redacted Colt?"
"I certainly hope so," I snap, thoroughly annoyed. When I see her perturbed expression, I soften my tone and say, "You deserve to be with someone far better than that redacted."
"Like who?"
Sadie asks, lifting her hand to indicate the other patrons at the bar. Since it seems like a genuine question, I look around. When my gaze lands on the only acceptable option, I tip my head toward the bartender and say, "Fletcher seems nice." Sadie releases an unladylike snort before saying,
"I think you have a much better shot with him than I do. He's clearly gay."
I tilt my head to the side, since she has a valid point. After looking around a bit more, I ask, "What about that guy?" When Sadie's gaze follows the direction of mine, she chuckles before asking,
"You mean the short, chubby, and balding 50-year-old who is here with his mom?"
"Yeah, what's wrong with him?" I ask, beaming down at her.
"Where should I begin?"
She mutters. We sway together for several long moments. Just when I begin to think she's content in my arms, Sadie asks,
"Well, do you have any other suggestions of potential love interests for me?"
The single soft-spoken word pops out of my mouth before I have a chance to contain it. "Me." Sadie's beautiful eyes register surprise, happiness, and then sadness before she says,
"We both know that's not a good idea."
"Do we?" I ask, brushing the back of my fingers along her jawline. Her eyes drift closed and she leans into my light touch before she pulls away and says in a sad tone,
"You're not attracted to me. You just like the ways I remind you of Maddie."
The accusation isn't completely false. Sadie's expectant expression crumples when I don't try to deny it. Without another word, she backs away from me and runs from the bar. Darn it. I couldn't have messed this up more royally if I had tried.
Chapter 9. I'm packing when Colt knocks on my bedroom door. I indicate for him to come in, but don't look in his direction, since I'm not sure I'll have the strength to follow through on leaving if I gaze into his eyes.
"Why are you packing? Don't leave,"
Colt says, sounding completely sincere. I'm surprised by the request, since I felt like he wanted nothing more than for me to leave since I first arrived here. I keep tossing items from the closet into one of my suitcases as I say, I have to get away from here, from you.
"I'll keep my hands off you. I promise. Just please don't go. I need you here."
He sounds distraught. I plop down on the edge of the bed and stare up at the ceiling. Deciding to be completely honest and vulnerable, I say, I'm not Maddie and I can't be her, Colt.
"I know, and I don't expect you to be."
He tells me quietly. "But all of the things you like about me are what remind you of her. I can't risk my heart any more than I already have when you only see me as a pale shadow of my sister."
"That's not true,"
he says. When I give him a side-eyed look that silently says, "Yeah, right," he grows more vehement.
"Sure, there are a few things about you that vaguely remind me of your sister, but you also have plenty of wonderful traits that are pure Sadie, like your sassy attitude, your innate ability to make even the most mundane things seem funny, your ridiculous addiction to cherry popsicles, your strong connection with all animals, especially dogs and horses, your terrible singing voice, your knack for pulling cookies out of the oven when they are perfectly baked, your chaotic sense of fashion, and countless other unique, magnificent things that make you one of a kind.
I can't believe he noticed all of those random quirks about me. Pulling out the most surprising ones, I say, the grape and orange flavored ones are gross, and I didn't know you could hear me singing in the shower from outside the bathroom.
I'll gladly eat only grape and orange popsicles and listen to your caterwauling if you'll just stay here with me.
He offers. You're lonely. I get that. But it's not me that you want. You just don't want to be alone, I say, staring down at the wooden floor planks.
I could find company to keep my bed warm at night, if that's all I wanted.
He informs me in a flat tone. His emotionless statement makes me flinch. I know it's true, because I saw Lila practically throwing herself at him at the bar earlier tonight. The mattress sinks when he sits down right beside me. Delectable heat emanates along my leg that is closest to him. I try to ignore it, but it sends a tingle racing along my spine. In a quiet, somber tone, he says,
I felt so empty and alone before you got here, Sadie. I even considered committing suicide at my lowest point.
This shocking revelation makes me turn to look at him. His gaze is downcast. I want nothing more than to reach out to him and make him feel better, but I force myself to hold back. Eventually, he turns to face me. He takes my hand within his before saying,
I didn't see a reason to go on living, but your arrival changed all of that, Sadie. Now, I look forward to seeing you every day. I enjoy bickering with you, and getting your opinion on everything from the best hamburger joint to which USA Idol singing contestant should win. I can't imagine not having you here with me.
I don't want to live my life being jealous of my dead sister, I admit quietly.
You won't.
He assures me.
We both loved Maddie, but she's gone, and she isn't coming back, no matter how much we wish otherwise. All we can do now is cherish our memories of her and do our best to honor her legacy. But Sadie, the feelings I have for you aren't related to Maddie. My affection for you is about you, and only you.
His sweet words are like a soothing balm to my soul. I've been falling for Colt for a long time, even though I haven't wanted to admit it, even to myself. I go to the drawer in my bedside table and retrieve the sticky note I've read at least 1,000 times. As I hand it to Colt, I say, I wasn't sure if I should show this to you. Maddie left it tucked inside my favorite book on her bookshelf, Pride and Prejudice. She knew that I like to reread it whenever I'm bored. As Colt stares at the note written in Maddie's distinctive flowing script, I replay its words, which I've memorized in my mind. Sadie, take care of him for me. He'll need you. Comfort each other. Love, M. When Colt finally looks up, his eyes are misty.
It's almost like she knew something was going to happen to her.
I nod somberly, unsure what to say.
And she wanted us to be here for each other.
Colt continues in a faraway voice. Going all in with the truth, I say, part of me is angry. She's not in charge. She's gone and she doesn't get to decide our futures. But another side of me feels so cherished and loved by her. We were her two favorite people, me a bit more. At my sly grin, he inserts,
That's debatable.
Ignoring that, I continue, she's taking care of the two most special people to her from beyond the grave. She knew that her death would nearly break us both, so she's showing us how much she loves us by giving us the gift of each other. He rises and gently sets the note down on the bedside table before approaching me. We stand close together, looking deeply into each other's eyes. This time, when he pulls me into his arms and kisses me deeply, I don't even consider stopping him.
Chapter 10. It feels so good to touch and be touched. But this isn't just anyone in my arms, it's Sadie. Beautiful, funny, bold, and vivacious Sadie. With anyone else, intimacy would feel like an empty act that is void of any true emotion. But with Sadie, it feels natural and right to kiss and hold her. She belongs in my embrace. It may not make sense, and others might disapprove of our romantic relationship, but I know in my heart that this is how things were meant to work out. Even Maddie gave us her blessing. Somehow she knew even before we did that this is our destiny. Sadie turns from me and shoves her half-packed suitcase off her bed. It crashes to the floor and sends her colorful clothes flying. I grin at the bold move before lunging in her direction. She kisses me back at first, but then lifts a palm to my chest and pushes gently. Immediately, I take a step back, backing off completely. If Sadie isn't sure about being with me, I won't pressure her. Her expression is somber when she sits on the edge of the bed and says, "There's something else I have to tell you."
That sounds ominous.
I respond as I sit down next to her. Turning to look at me, Sadie says in a quiet voice,
I've been chatting with one of the live chat data hackers on the ranch's business account.
Her words surprise me. I give her a bewildered look as I draw out the word, "Okay." She quickly continues,
He says that for $10,000, he will sell us screenshots of Maddie's direct messages with her lawyer from when she was setting up her revocable living trust and will.
Why would we care about buying those conversations? We already know what the documents said. I shrug my shoulders, curious why Sadie is bringing this up at all, let alone right now.
He claims that they reveal a big secret that Maddie didn't want anyone to know about.
Sadie explains. I mull this over for a long moment before asking, "Are you considering paying him for it?" Sadie bites her lip before answering,
I'm not sure. I wasn't going to, but the longer I think about it, the more I want to know her secret. It might explain why she felt the need to push us together.
"Perhaps," I respond, lost in thought. When the silence lingers between us, Sadie asks me,
What do you think? Should we buy it?
I can't deny that I'm extremely curious, I admit, before adding, but I think we should respect Maddie's privacy. She must have had a reason for keeping whatever it is a secret from both of us.
Right.
Sadie responds, seeming to accept my opinion. Pointing to the sticky note on the bedside table, I say, "We know from that note that she wanted us to be here for each other, and I, for one, am completely sure that I want to be with you."
I want to be with you too.
She murmurs. Lifting my palm to cup her cheek, I look deeply into her eyes as I say, "Then that's all that matters. We want each other, and we have Maddie's blessing. We don't need to find out any of her deep, dark secrets." Sadie nods her head in agreement, before reaching over to unbutton my red plaid shirt. Once she makes her way down to the bottom, her palms slide up my chest and over my shoulders, taking my shirt with them. She lets out a satisfied sigh before saying,
It has been torture watching you work shirtless in the barn, day after day, and not being able to put my hands on you.
"I didn't think you even noticed me parading around topless for you," I tell her.
Oh, I noticed.
She answers with a chuckle, before adding,
I considered doing the same, but was afraid one of our boarders might catch me.
I grin at her. "If you'd been working topless out there, I would have been so desperate for you, I probably would have redacted." Her lips fall open at my bold claim. With her half-lidded, desirous gaze locked on me, she stands and ever so slowly begins redacted. I'm mesmerized by redacted. When she redacted, I remain locked in place, frozen in awe and unparalleled desire. Her head tips back and she redacted. "I want you so much." The husky words emerge from deep in my throat.
Show me.
Sadie whispers. I don't hesitate for a moment. Standing, I quickly redacted. Sadie's gaze is magnetized to redacted. I look up toward the ceiling and let out a satisfied sigh as she redacted. My mind is lost redacted. Redacted. My breath hitches in my throat as I stare at the amazing sight. Redacted. Quickly losing my last semblance of control, I redacted. Redacted. Her gaze is soft and hazy when she looks directly into my eyes and says,
Make me yours, Colt.
I redacted. Soon, I'm lost in her and feel more like the one being claimed than the one doing the claiming, as I redacted into Sadie's loving embrace.
Chapter 11. I've never felt so treasured, adored, or satisfied. Colt absolutely rocked my world, and I can't wait until he recuperates enough for us to redacted. We are redacted, and he's holding me tight in his arms when he surprises me by apologizing.
I'm sorry our first time together wasn't more tender and loving.
It was perfect, I assure him, kissing his damp temple. His expression still looks uncertain, so I say, we have plenty of time to redact it in every way imaginable. I want to experience it all with you.
Me too.
He murmurs. The worry lines ease from his face at my reassurance. In typical male fashion, he falls asleep within moments. I'm surprised to find that his soft snoring is reassuring rather than annoying. I can't imagine ever tiring of it. I'm completely relaxed and happy, but there's one thing I can't get out of my head, no matter how hard I try to release it. That darn secret. What in the world would Maddie try to hide from the two people closest to her? Why did she keep it a secret? How could she keep anything important from me? That last question is what hurts the most. I didn't keep any secrets from her. I openly told her every little detail about my life, so the fact that she was keeping something important from me stings. Actually, it more than stings. The pain and wondering are crushing. The more I try to push it out of my head, the more stubbornly it clings. I'm beyond curious, almost to the point of obsession. I'd been nearly certain that Colt would want to find out her secret. Having him on board would help alleviate my guilt over invading Maddie's privacy and give me permission to pay the ransom. Granted, I don't need the man's permission, but if he was in agreement that we should buy the secret, it would be a much easier decision. I'd thought that being intimate with Colt might make me feel guilty, but I'm relieved to find that I don't feel bad at all. I'm confident that this is what Maddie wanted. I just don't know why. Finding out that secret might give me the absolute closure I need to move on with Colt without a trace of negativity. Or it could make me feel like a total jerk. Ugh. This not knowing is the worst. Unless the secret is something terrible that I'd rather not know. But I can't be certain, can I? My mind circles in an endless loop of doubt and wonder. The rational side of me says to buy the stupid secret and be done with it, but the emotional side of me doesn't want to betray Maddie's trust. I can't believe Colt isn't tempted at all. How can he be so mature? If he'd been willing, I would have gladly paid the hacker any amount of money to find out the truth. But Colt seems reluctant to find out what Maddie was hiding. It's almost like he doesn't want to know. But I don't want to wonder about it for the rest of my life. Despite how comfortable I am in Colt's loving arms, after several hours of staring at the ceiling, I realize that sleep is going to continue to evade me. As gently as I can, I extricate myself from his strong embrace. He stirs in his slumber, so I freeze. When he shifts to turn over, grabs my pillow, and breathes out my name, it's all I can do to keep the happy tears at bay. Despite his reassurances, I've been concerned that his heart still truly belongs to my sister. Having him call out for me in his semi-conscious state makes a tingle of happiness shiver through my system. I know Maddie was his first love, and she will always have a special place in his heart. But it's reassuring to know that he's making room for me in there, as well. After I pad downstairs, I make myself a pot of tea. There is nothing quite as peaceful as the dark and quiet early morning hours on the ranch while the world is still asleep. The cool, clean air fills my lungs in a way that midday and evening oxygen can't achieve. The distinct sense of being alone gives me time and space to breathe deeply and truly think. I should be the happiest woman in the world. Colt is an amazing man, and he has given me his heart as completely as he is able. I couldn't ask for anything better. But Maddie's secret lingers heavily in a gray cloud over me, taunting me and making me feel uneasy, as if everything Colt and I have built together could easily crumble and topple down around us. I pick up my cell phone and type a quick message to the hacker. The 3 dots immediately begin bouncing, indicating that he is typing back. I should have known he'd be up and online at this ungodly hour. Nefarious types are known for being nocturnal. Holding my breath, I anxiously await his response. This is the moment of truth. I'm reaching the point of no return. If I buy this secret, I won't be able to unlearn it. But the not knowing is killing me. I need this closure. When the payment address pops up on my screen, I ask myself for the 1000th time if this is the right decision. Shaking my head, I whisper aloud, "I'm sorry, Maddie. I have to find out." With that, I tap the buttons to send the money. Within moments, several screenshot pictures arrive in my email. After quickly reading through the direct messages Maddie had with her lawyer, I stare in stunned silence out toward the sun just beginning to peek up over the horizon in the pasture.
Chapter 12. I wake up feeling better and more alive than I have since before Maddie's accident. Life once again feels meaningful and worth living, and it's all thanks to Sadie. Being in her arms was like coming home to a clean house with fresh-baked cookies in the oven. It felt comfortable and right. Plus, the redacted was absolutely mind-blowing. She is gorgeous and confident, and even the simplest touch from her sets my skin on fire. Our chemistry together is off the charts. I'll always miss Maddie, but Sadie is my destiny going forward. Rolling over, I pick up the sticky note from the bedside table. Maddie's beautiful handwritten note is a precious and thoughtful gift that I will always cherish. Without it, I would be left to wonder if she would disapprove of my relationship with her sister. Now I know that this is what Maddie wanted. I'm sure she's smiling down on the two of us, relieved that we have found shelter with each other from the storm of our grief. I walk to the bathroom, hoping I'll run into Sadie along the way. Since I don't, I take a quick shower alone with the intention of finding her as soon as I'm clean. Rather than my usual uniform of jeans and flannel, I put on only a pair of soft, gray sweatpants. Maddie used to say the low-slung, comfortable pants were an instant turn-on, and I can't wait to see if Sadie feels the same way. After a quick search of the house, I head out to the front porch. Sadie turns from her perch on the yellow swing. From the way her gaze flicks downward, I can tell the gray sweats are already working their magic. Grinning, I say, "Good morning, beautiful."
Morning?
Sadie responds, but her interested look quickly morphs into one of sadness. Sitting down beside her, I put my arm around her and ask, "Is everything okay?" She shakes her head. Tears begin filling her lower eyelids and threaten to spill over. Suddenly, I know the truth, without her having to say a word. "You bought the secret, didn't you?" Staring down at the wooden floorboards of the porch, Sadie nods her head. "Darn it, Sadie. Nothing good can come from this." I run my hand through my hair, wondering why she would risk marring the memory of our perfect first night together for something that might make our lives implode.
Do you want to know?
She asks me in a quiet voice. No? Yes. I don't know. I answer honestly, frustrated that she's putting me in this impossible position. We sit in silence for several minutes, swaying slowly back and forth on the porch swing. Eventually, I say, "It's still early. I'm going for a ride. I'll start on my chores after I get back." Sadie nods but remains quiet. Her eyes are gripped by sadness. Whatever this secret is, has obviously shaken her to her core. Part of me is desperate to know what my wife was keeping from me, but looking at Sadie's downcast expression makes me not want to find out. I ache to reach out to Sadie and comfort her, but I can't be there for her right now. The urge to get away is nearly overwhelming, so I lunge off the swing. After quickly grabbing a t-shirt from inside, I take long strides to the barn. I ride until the sun is up high in the sky before stopping at the stream where Maddie and I used to like to picnic. I always feel close to her here. I spread out a wool blanket and plop down in the grass near a shade tree. The bubbling of the water in the shallow, rocky area is comforting as I try to figure out what to do. It doesn't take Sadie long to find me. She sits down on the blanket next to me and says,
Smart of you to sit downwind of those things.
I look where she's pointing at the patch of beautiful wild flowers that are the ranch's namesake. I nod but can't drum up a chuckle. Turning serious, Sadie says,
Look, I'm sorry for buying the secret. I really tried to forget about it, but my mind just wouldn't let it go. I needed the closure of knowing the truth, but I promise that I won't ever let it slip to you if you don't want to know.
I appreciate her willingness to keep it to herself, even though it must be hard not to talk about it. We both stare out toward the rapidly flowing water and slip into a comfortable silence. Eventually, I say, I want to know her secret. My curiosity about it will drive me crazy, especially since you know.
You're sure?
Sadie asks me, sounding uncertain. I nod, confident that finding out the truth will have to be better than always wondering. Sadie pushes some buttons on her phone, then hands it to me. I stare at the screen as I flip through the pictures of Maddie's direct messages with her lawyer about setting up her estate. After I finish reading, I set the phone aside and say in a bewildered voice, She had an inoperable brain tumor? Maddie was dying? Sadie nods. My sluggish mind struggles to process this new information about my wife. Why wouldn't she have told us?
I don't know.
Sadie whispers. We could have helped her, I object, saddened by how alone Maddie must have felt trying to deal with this terrible prognosis all by herself. When the awful thought strikes, I'm unable to oust it from my mind. Do you think she fell off her horse on purpose to keep from suffering with a long, drawn-out illness?
I wondered that too.
Sadie admits, before deciding.
But I don't think she did it intentionally. She couldn't have known that she would hit her head on that rock and die from her injuries. I did some research online this morning, and a few of the symptoms of her type of tumor are difficulty with balance, trouble making decisions, and confusion. I think it was just a tragic accident.
Or perhaps not quite as tragic as we thought, I weigh in quietly. At Sadie's confused expression, I explain. She would much rather have gone the way she did than have us all watch her struggle and eventually lose the battle with cancer.
Definitely.
Sadie agrees. After several minutes, Sadie asks,
Are you sorry we found out the truth?
No, I'm glad to have the full picture. I don't know why Maddie chose to keep it from us, but the note she left for you makes a lot more sense now. Sadie nods before saying,
She would have told us eventually. Maybe she just needed time to process it alone first.
Maybe? I agree, lost in thought. We relax on our backs and watch the white puffy clouds high above us. I reach out for Sadie's hand and gently rub my thumb along hers. It would be tempting to nap and relax out here all day, if we didn't need to head back to the barn and start on chores. Needing a bit more time before returning to reality, I turn toward Sadie and murmur, I'm so glad she wanted us to be here for each other. Her approval of our relationship makes it feel even more right. We are each other's destiny.
Yes.
Sadie agrees. An ornery glint dances in her eyes just before she glances down and adds,
Speaking of that, I couldn't help but notice how irresistible you look in those gray sweatpants.
Is that so? I ask, quirking a brow and grinning in her direction.
Indeed.
She murmurs. After taking a look around to confirm that we are all alone in the vast meadow, she adds,
I'm dying to know redacted.
Only one way to find out, I tell her in a husky tone. Quick as a wink, Sadie redacted. My stomach chooses that inopportune moment to growl loudly. Sadie chuckles before tipping back to ask,
You hungry?
I missed breakfast, I admit, as I begin redacted. I add, I'm starving, but there's one thing I want way more than food. Redacted and show her exactly what I'm craving.
Chapter 13. Colt is full of surprises. Just when I think he can't possibly get any more wonderful, he dazzles me with another remarkably sweet gesture or hot night of passion in his arms. Tonight, he took me to the ballet in Denver. Somehow, he's able to sense exactly what I need, almost even before I do. He's driving his truck as we head home from our big evening out in the city. Grinning at him in his smart suit, I say, You clean up really well, Mr. Zimmer.
It's worth getting all gussied up to spend the evening with you, soon to be Mrs. Zimmer.
His words make me choke on thin air. I'd always assumed Maddie would be the only Mrs. Zimmer, and I've learned to accept that I'll simply be Colt's love, not his wife. Once my stunned coughing spell subsides, I ask, Are you serious? Do you want to get married?
You don't have to sound that taken aback by it,
he says quietly, as if I've hurt his feelings. Wanting to immediately fix that, I say, I'm not taken aback. Just surprised. I didn't think you'd ever marry again.
I had a wonderful experience with marriage the first time around, and I'd like to commit to that kind of permanence with you. But if you're not ready...
He leaves the sentence dangling, so I immediately pick up where he left off. No, I want to marry you so much. I just never allowed myself to imagine that it might be a possibility for us. Colt pulls over and stops on the side of the dusty two-lane road, so he can focus his attention fully on me and our conversation. Taking my hands within his and looking deeply into my eyes, he says,
I know this isn't the flowery romantic proposal you deserve, but I'm sure about you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Sadie. Will you marry me?
Tears pool in my lower eyelids as I nod my head.
Yes.
Colt asks, obviously needing me to verbally confirm my answer. Yes, I would love to marry you. I squeal before lunging in his direction. I redacted, and we make out for several long moments. When we finally force our lips to break apart, he lifts a hand to cup my cheek as he gazes up at me as if I'm the greatest gift he's ever received. Grinning, I tease him, I never imagined myself being saddled down with a crusty cowboy.
Yeah, well? I wasn't always a country boy. I grew up in Connecticut.
He says matter-of-factly, as if this isn't a total bombshell. What? You're joking, I say, stunned by his revelation.
Nope, I was a proper city boy in my youth.
He responds. Shaking my head, I say, I knew that your brother lived out east, but I assumed he moved there because the criminal activity is practically non-existent in our rural area. Being a police officer here likely wouldn't be too exciting. Chuckling, Colt agrees.
That's true. But no, I'm the one who moved away from where we grew up. I needed the wide open space, and I knew I wanted a career with horses.
I really can't picture you in New England, I tell him honestly.
You and I can go out there for a visit sometime. I like the hustle and bustle of the city, on occasion. Plus, I'd like to show you off and give you a tour of where I grew up. I'm not very close to most of my hoity-toity family, but I'd like for you to meet my brother, Austin. He's the real deal.
He tells me. I would love that, I respond.
You might even talk me into wearing a Power Clash outfit while I'm there.
He says with a happy smile. I chuckle at the mental image of Colt in bright mismatched patterns and colors, but then feel my face fall. He immediately picks up on the change in my mood and asks,
What's wrong?
What will people from your hometown think of you being with your dead wife's sister? I ask before biting my lip, hard. Sometimes I allow myself to forget about the unusual circumstances of our world-rocking romance, but when it comes back to the top of my mind, it crashes in. Colt's gaze is intense on mine when he says,
It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks, except the two of us and Maddie. We love each other, and we know without a doubt that this is what Maddie wanted for us. This feels so right it can't be wrong.
When he squeezes my hips, a relieved whoosh of air escapes my lungs. Yes, I breathe out as he tips his lips up toward mine. Almost all thought leaves my mind as I kiss the man of my dreams. Forcing myself to pull back again, I say, if we're going to marry each other, I want everything out in the open. We can't have any secrets between us.
I don't have any secrets from you.
He whispers. When I remain frozen, he guesses.
But you have one from me.
Hoping it's true, I say, it probably isn't a big deal. I just want to be completely transparent with you about absolutely everything.
Spill it,
He says, obviously concerned about what I may be getting ready to reveal. After taking a deep breath for courage, my words spill out in a rush. I was at the rodeo where you and Maddie met. I was the one who saw you first in the ring and was immediately attracted to you. When I pointed you out to her, she quickly claimed you for herself. She made a beeline for you, introduced herself, and won you over with her bubbly personality. When you helped her get the job at Marigold Meadow, I decided that the two of you were a better fit anyway, so I quietly stepped aside and let her have you. But I've always secretly been a little bitter about it. Even though I'm not yet sure of Colt's reaction, simply making the admission to him relieves the pressing weight from my shoulders that has been creating a dull ache for years. Colt seems to be weighing his words carefully. Finally, he says,
I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm confident that everything worked out exactly as it was meant to. I love you, sweet Sadie.
Appreciating his perfect reaction to my admission, I say in a sincere tone, I love you more, handsome Colt. His hands glide up the sides of my hips to my waist as he gazes up at me and says,
I don't think there's any way that could be possible.
Prove it, I whisper near his mouth. He claims my lips with his and redacted in the cab of his truck, until we're both relaxed, spent, and impossibly happy. Epilogue. Colt is grilling steaks and aluminum foil veggie packets for dinner tonight. Although I never would have imagined it, the man is actually quite gifted in the kitchen. Not quite as talented as he is in the bedroom, but I'll never complain about that. We promised not to keep any secrets between us, so I need to have a serious talk with him tonight. Trying to figure out how to broach the subject, I walk up behind him as he mans the grill, wrap my arms around his waist, and tip up to press a kiss to the side of his neck.
Be careful with that loving attention, or I'll end up tossing you over my shoulder caveman style and taking you straight to bed.
He warns me. I don't see a problem with that, I murmur near his ear.
I'd be delighted with that outcome, but our steaks would burn.
He says rationally. I reluctantly release my hold on him as I say, after dinner then?
It's a date.
A wide grin spreads across his face as he flips the meat. Before I can respond, his phone begins jingling. He smiles at the screen before answering.
Hey brother. Are you out keeping the streets of Connecticut safe?
I head inside the house to put the dinner rolls in the oven, so Colt can have some privacy while he chats with Austin. When Colt brings the plates of hot food inside, he's off the phone, so I ask, everything okay with your family?
Yes, they're all fine, but as I was talking to Austin, something really strange happened.
He hints as we sit down at the table. I butter a hot roll for each of us as I ask, what's that?
He had just gotten off duty and was heading home when he called me. Right in the middle of us catching up, he saw something up ahead, causing a traffic jam. When he went to check it out, it was the hottest teacher from our high school, Ms. Summers, wearing a wedding gown in the middle of the road.
My eyes widen in surprise. I lift a hand to cover my full mouth as I ask around a bite of hot buttery roll, what? Seriously?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, huh? I can't imagine being a police officer. You'd never know what wild things each new day is going to bring. But Austin seems to love it.
Colt says. Wow, there must be a heck of a story there, I decide. Colt nods.
I can't wait to hear it.
Me neither, I agree. Deciding there's no better time than the present, I change the subject. I don't know if you've noticed, but my therapy dog training here at the ranch is going really well.
You're a natural with all animals.
Colt gives me a sweet enamored look. So are you. I think it's because we love them so much, I say. He remains quiet, so I continue. The headquarters of our training facility is so pleased with what I've been able to do with the satellite office here in Colorado, they have asked me to look into starting a horse therapy program.
Really? That's fantastic. You'll be amazing at that, and you'll be able to help so many people.
Colt's enthusiastic approval feels good, really good. I'd been concerned that he might think I was taking on too much. But he doesn't know everything yet. I'm glad you're on board, I say tentatively, wondering how I should tell him the rest.
Of course. Working more in the barn is sure to be a stable career.
At his expectant look, I give him a half smile and repeat, a stable career, huh? Your dad joke talent is already on point, so that will come in handy in the coming months. I give him an expectant look of my own as I wait for him to process what I've said. His thick eyebrows shoot up almost to his hairline as he asks,
Dad jokes? Months? Are you? Are we?
Chuckling at his rush of excitement, I answer his partially formed questions. Yes, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a daddy. Colt whoops with excitement, which makes Boo lift his head and howl. We laugh as the man gleefully spins me around in his arms. After we sit back down at the table, we are both too excited to eat. Colt's eyes are dancing when he asks,
Would you prefer a boy or a girl?
I mull it over for a long moment before answering. It would be wonderful to have a miniature version of you strutting around here, but I can also easily picture a sassy little girl in pink cowboy boots. Colt gives me a happy grin.
I can imagine that too.
Taking his hand within mine, I say, perhaps if it's a girl, we can name her Madeline. It's different enough from Madison to make room for her own identity, but we could still call her Maddie, like her amazing aunt. Squeezing my hand, Colt says,
That sounds like a wonderful tribute.
Relief surges through my system that he is so obviously thrilled by the baby news. He leans forward to brush his lips across mine before saying,
Whether it's a boy or girl, this baby is lucky to be born into an environment filled with so much love.
I'm the lucky one, I tell him, fully meaning it.
No, that's me,
he says, before sweeping me into his arms and carrying me into our happily ever after.
Colt's brother, Austin, is a police officer who thought he'd seen it all. That is, until he spots the hottest teacher from his high school blocking traffic in a wedding gown. Get hot for teacher with their reverse age gap romance, Connecticut cop.